Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namane. Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane Trinadapi Sunichena Toradeva Sahishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Hare Nam Hare Nam Hare Namaiva Kevalam Kalo Nastyeva 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 Gatiranyata. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Gopala Govinda Ram Sri Madhusudana. Hare Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Gopala Govinda Ram Sri Madhusudana. Govinda Jaya Jaya Gopala Jaya Jaya Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jaya Jaya Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jaya Jaya Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jaya Jaya. Krishna 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 Hey Krishna 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 Hey Krishna 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 Rakshamam Krishna 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 Pahima. Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rakshamam. Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava pahi mam. Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rakshamam. Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, pahi mam. Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa, Paribrajacharya Astotra Satta Sri Simad, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrindi ki jai, Namacharya Haridas Thakur ki jai, Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar, Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrindi ki jai, Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath, Syamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki jai, Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Navadvip Dham ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Tulsi Maharani ki jai, Yamuna Devi ki jai, Ganga Devi ki jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Cologne Krishna Book Group ki, Krishna Book Club ki. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. A special section. It is called the 5 chapters of the Rasa Leela. According to the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, these 5 chapters are the essence of the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. These 5 chapters is the most confidential section of the entire 335 chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam. These 5 are the special. And I have broken it out into subsections so that we can digest it nicely. So this is going to take several weeks. We're going to go slow. We're not going to rush it. And we will then be in the topmost state of Krishna consciousness. You are qualified to study this section for the following reasons. Number 1, you systematically went through Bhagavad Gita with me. So by going through the entire Bhagavad Gita, that first of all qualifies you. Second qualification is that we're not reading the 10th canto, we're reading Srila Prabhupada's translation and purport of this 10th canto. Krishna book is unique because he just doesn't tell the story. As he's narrating the events, because this is the most confidential subject matter, he needs time to explain the different intricacies so that we do not make any mistake in understanding this Rasa Leela. Prabhupada wrote the Krishna book in 1969. At that time, he had completed 2 cantos of Bhagavatam, and he was thinking that perhaps he may not live long enough to finish the 12 cantos. So he decided to take a break from his Bhagavatam translations, and he did this summary study of the 10th canto and added everything necessary so even neophytes can easily understand this topmost philosophy. So we owe a debt of gratitude immensely to Srila Prabhupada for expertly and brilliantly explaining these 5 chapters, which are the topmost of all the Bhagavatam philosophy. If you're ready, then repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this first section is called Parakiya Ras. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated, the Rasa dance took place on the full moon night of the Sharat season. From the statements of previous chapters, it appears that the festival of Govardhan Puja was performed just after the dark moon night of the month of Kartik, and thereafter the ceremony of Bratri Dvitiya was performed. Then the wrath of Indra was exhibited in the shape of torrents and rain and hailstorm. Lord Krishna held up Govardhan Hill for 7 days, up until the 9th day of the moon. Thereafter, on the 10th day, the inhabitants of Vrindavan were talking amongst themselves about the wonderful activities of Krishna. And the next day, Ekadashi, was observed by Nanda Maharaj. On the next day, Dwadashi, Nanda Maharaj went to take bath in the Ganges and was arrested by the men of Varuna. Then Nanda was released by Lord Krishna. After that, Nanda Maharaj, along with all the other cowherder men, were shown the spiritual sky. So in this way, the full moon night of the Sharat season came to an end. The full moon night of Ashvina is called Sharad Purnima. It appears from the statement of Srimad Bhagavatam that Krishna had to wait yet another year for such a moon before enjoying the rasa dance with the gopis. At the age of 7 years, Krishna lifted Govardhan Hill. Therefore, the rasa dance took place during Krishna's 8th year. From Vedic literature, it appears that when a theatrical actor dances among many dancing girls, the group dance is called a rasa dance. When Krishna saw the full moon night of the Sharat season, Krishna decorated himself with various seasonal flowers, especially the Malika flowers, which are very fragrant. Krishna remembered the gopis' prayers to Goddess Katyayani, wherein they prayed for Krishna to be their husband. So Krishna thought that this full night of the Sharat season was just suitable for a nice dance. And so their desire to have Krishna as their husband would then be fulfilled. The words used in this connection in Srimad Bhagavatam are Bhagavan Api. This means that although Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna has no desire that needs to be fulfilled because Krishna is always full with 6 opulences. So this is a very important aspect here to understand this Rasa Leela. Krishna has no desire that needs to be fulfilled. And so there is a word for this, which we will come upon later, but I will say it now. Aptakama Atmaram. So Aptakama means Krishna is self-satisfied, as it says here, no desire that needs to be fulfilled. And Atmaram, he's self-satisfied. He's always in transcendental bliss at all times. Yet, Krishna wanted to enjoy the company of the gopis. So the words Bhagavan Api signifies that this is not like the ordinary dancing of young boys and young girls. The specific word used in Srimad Bhagavatam is Yoga Mayam Upasritaha, which means that this dancing with the gopis is on the platform of Yoga Maya, not Mahamaya. The dancing of young boys and girls within this material world is in the kingdom of Mahamaya, or the external energy. But the rasa dance of Krishna with the gopis is on the platform of Yogamaya. The difference between the platform of Yogamaya and Mahamaya is compared in Chaitanya Charitamrita to the difference between gold and iron. From the viewpoint of metallurgy, gold and iron are both metals, but the quality is completely different. So, just as a side note, here is a good understanding of our philosophy, Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva, that something can be one and at the same time different. So gold and iron are one in the sense that they are metal, but gold and iron are different because gold is so much more valuable and worth more than iron is. So this is a good example of Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva, that something is simultaneously one and different. Similarly, although the rasa dance and Lord Krishna's association with the gopis appear like the ordinary mixing of young boys and girls, the quality is completely different. The difference is appreciated by great Vaishnavas because they can understand the difference between love of Krishna and material lust. On the Mahamaya platform, dances take place on the basis of sense gratification. But when Krishna called the gopis by sounding his flute, the gopis very hurriedly rushed towards the spot of rasa dance with the transcendental desire of satisfying Krishna. So that's another important point. By definition, and we have said this all throughout the last year, the difference between material activities and spiritual activities. Material activities are done for one's personal material sense gratification, whereas spiritual activities are any activities which is done for the desire of satisfying Krishna. So it says here, the gopis rushed to the spot with the transcendental desire of satisfying Krishna. So that right there takes it off the material platform. Continuing. The author of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, has explained that lust means sense gratification, and love also means sense gratification, but for Krishna's sense gratification. In other words, when activities are enacted on the platform of personal sense gratification, they are called material activities. But when they are enacted for the satisfaction of Krishna, then they are spiritual activities. On any platform of activities, the principle of sense gratification is there. But on the spiritual platform, sense gratification is for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, whereas on the material platform, it is for the performer. For example, on the material platform, when a servant serves a master, he is not trying to satisfy the senses of the master. No, he is trying to satisfy his own senses. For the servant would not serve the so-called master if the payment stopped. That means that the servant engages in the service of the master just to satisfy his own senses. But on the spiritual platform, the servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead serves Krishna without payment and continues his or her service in all conditions. That is the difference between Krishna consciousness and material consciousness. And so it appears that Krishna enjoyed the rasa dance with the gopis when Krishna was 8 years old. At that time, many of the gopis were married because in India, especially in those days, girls were married at a very early age. Under the circumstances, all the gopis who wanted to have Krishna as their husband were already married. And at the same time, they continued to hope that Krishna would be their husband. So their attitude towards Krishna was that of paramour love. Therefore, the loving affairs of Krishna with the gopis is called parakiya rasa. A married man or a wife who desires another wife or husband is called parakiya ras. Actually, Krishna is the husband of everyone because Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. Krishna is already the husband of everyone because he is already in everyone's heart. The gopis wanted Krishna to be their husband, but factually there was no possibility of Krishna marrying all the gopis. But because they had that natural tendency to accept Krishna as their supreme husband, the relationship between the gopis and Krishna is called parakiya ras. This parakiya ras is ever existing in Goloka Vrindavan in the spiritual sky, where there is no possibility of the inebriety or impurity which characterizes parakiya ras in the material world. For in the material world, parakiya ras is abominable, whereas in the spiritual world, it is present in the super excellent relationship of Krishna and the gopis. So, to understand this last point, we should go back to what we learned at the beginning of our Bhagavad Gita lessons when we began chapter 15. If you recall, chapter 15 opens up with an example, analogy given by Krishna, saying that the material world is a perverted reflection of the reality, the spiritual world. And he gave the analogy of a tree reflected on the lake or pond. If you stand at the other end of the pond and look at the reflection of the tree, the top of the tree is now at the bottom, and the bottom of the tree is now on top in the reflection. The reality, the tree is standing as it should, but in the reflection, everything is perverted. So in the material world, this parakiya ras is not elevated, it is the most degrading, the most abominable. Whereas in Krishna's abode, it is the topmost experience for the devotee. So this first verse of chapter 15 is very helpful. The perverted reflection. The material world is a perverted reflection of the eternal spiritual world. There are many other relationships with Krishna: master and servant, friend and friend, parent and son, lover and beloved. And out of all of these rasas, the parakiya ras is considered, from the spiritual point of view, to be the topmost. As Krishna's, here it is. I didn't remember that it was here. Here it is, what I was just talking about. As Krishna states in the introduction to chapter 15 in Bhagavad Gita, Urdhva Moolam Adha Shakam Ashvatang Prahur Avyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastang Veda Saveda Vid. This material world is the perverted reflection of the spiritual world. It is just like the reflection of a tree on the bank of a reservoir of water. The topmost part of the tree is seen as the lowest part. So similarly, parakya ras, when pervertedly reflected in this material world, is most abominable. When people therefore imitate the rasa dance of Krishna with the gopis, they simply enjoy the perverted, abominable reflection of the transcendental parakya ras. But we must always remember, there is no possibility of enjoying this transcendental parakya ras within the material world or on the material platform. It is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam that one should not imitate this parakya ras even in dream or imagination. For those who do so drink the most deadly poison. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So the next scene is called The Gopis Respond to the Vibration of Krishna's Flute. When Krishna, the supreme enjoyer, desired to enjoy the company of the gopis on that full moon night of the Sharat season, exactly at that very moment, the moon, the lord of the stars, appeared in the sky, displaying his most beautiful features. The full moon night of the Sharat season is the most beautiful night in the year. In India, there is a great monument called Taj Mahal in Agra, a city in the province of Uttar Pradesh. And the tomb is made of first-class marble stone. So during the night of the full moon of the Sharat season, many foreigners go to see the beautiful reflections of the moon on that tomb. Thus, this full moon night is celebrated even today for its beauty. And when the full moon rose in the east, it tinged everything with a reddish color. With the rising of the moon, the whole sky appeared smeared by red kumkum. Just as when a husband, long separated from his wife, returns home, he may decorate the face of his wife with red kumkum. This long expected moonrise of the Sharat season was thus smearing the eastern sky. The appearance of the moon increased Krishna's desire to dance with the gopis. The forests were filled with fragrant flowers. The atmosphere was cooling and festive. So when Lord Krishna began to blow his flute, the gopis all over Vrindavan became enchanted. Their attraction to the vibration of the flute increased 1,000 times due to the rising full moon, the red horizon, the calm and cool atmosphere, and the blossoming flowers. All these gopis were by nature very much attracted to the beauty of Krishna. And when they heard the vibration of Krishna's flute, they became apparently lustful to satisfy the senses of Krishna. So again, the point is being stressed. They want to satisfy Krishna's senses. So immediately upon hearing the vibration of the flute, they all left their respective engagements and proceeded to the very spot where Krishna was standing. While they ran very swiftly, all their earrings swung back and forth, and they all rushed towards the place known as Vanshivata. Some of them were engaged in milking cows, but they left their milking business half finished and immediately went to Krishna. One of them had just collected milk and had put it in a milk pan on the oven to boil. But she did not care whether the milk overboiled and spilled, for she immediately left to go to see Krishna. Some of them were breastfeeding their small babies, and some were engaged in distributing food to the members of their families. But they left all such engagements and immediately rushed towards the spot where Krishna was playing his flute. Some had been engaged in serving their husbands, and some were themselves engaged in eating. But not caring to serve their husbands nor eat, they immediately left. Some of them wanted to decorate their faces with cosmetic ointments and dress themselves very nicely before going to Krishna. But unfortunately, they could not finish their cosmetic decorations nor put on their dresses in the right way because of their anxiety to immediately meet Krishna. Their faces were decorated hurriedly and were haphazardly finished. Some even put the lower part of their dress on the upper part of their bodies and the upper part on the lower part. While all the gopis were hurriedly leaving their respective places, their husbands, brothers, and fathers were all struck with wonder to know where they were going. Being young girls, they were protected either by a husband, elderly brothers, or their father. And all their guardians forbade them to go to Krishna, but they disregarded their guardians. The fact is that when a person becomes attracted by Krishna and is in full Krishna consciousness, he or she does not care for any worldly duties, even though very urgent. Krishna consciousness is so powerful that it gives everyone relief from all kinds of material activities. Srila Rupa Goswami has written a very nice verse wherein one gopi advises another, "O my dear friend, if you still desire to enjoy the company of material society, friendship, and love, then please do not go to see this smiling boy Govinda, who is just now standing on the bank of the Yamuna and playing his flute, his lips brightened by the beams of the full moonlight." So Srila Rupa Goswami indirectly instructs that one who has been captivated by the beautiful smiling face of Krishna has lost all attraction for material enjoyments. And that is the test of advancement in Krishna consciousness. A person advancing in Krishna consciousness must lose interest in material activities and personal sense gratification. So here I point out, here's how to test your own level of advancement. Here's how to test. Ask yourself, how much interest do I still have in material sense gratification? And how much interest do I have in hearing and chanting and remembering and praying and serving Krishna? Only you can answer that question. Let us continue. Some of the gopis were factually detained from going to Krishna by their husbands and were locked up by force within their rooms. Being unable to go to Krishna, they began to meditate upon Krishna's transcendental form by closing their eyes. They already had the form of Krishna within their minds. They proved themselves to be the greatest of yogis. as it is stated in Bhagavad Gita by Krishna himself. Yoginam api sarvesham madgyaten antar atmana Shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yuktatamo mataha. Krishna told Arjuna at the end of the 6th chapter that a person who is constantly thinking of Krishna within one's heart with faith and love is to be considered the topmost of all yogis. Actually, a true yogi concentrates the mind on the form of Lord Vishnu within the heart. That is real yoga. And Krishna is the original form of all Vishnu tattvas. Since these gopis could not go to Krishna personally, they began instead to meditate on Krishna as perfect yogis. In the conditioned stage of the living entities, there are two kinds of results of fruitive activities. The conditioned living entity, who is constantly engaged in sinful activities, has as his result suffering. And one who is engaged in pious activities has as their result material enjoyment. But in either case, material suffering or material enjoyment, the enjoyer or sufferer is conditioned by material nature. On the other end, the gopi associates of Krishna, who assembled in the place where Krishna was appearing, are from different groups, and they are all on the spiritual platform. They are not conditioned by material nature. No, they are on the spiritual understanding. Most of the gopis are eternal companions of Krishna. As stated in the Brahma Samhita, Ananda Chinmaya Rasapati Bhavatavi. In the spiritual world, the associates of Krishna, especially the gopis, are manifestations of the pleasure potency of Lord Krishna. They are expansions of Srimati Radharani. So that is how to understand the gopis. Krishna's pleasure potency is called Hladini Shakti. That's Krishna's pleasure potency. And that Hladini Shakti is represented completely by Srimati Radharani. And the gopis are expansions of Radharani. When Krishna exhibits his transcendental pastimes within this material world, in some of the universes, not only the eternal associates of Krishna come, but also those who are being promoted to that status from the material world. So we discussed this at the end of last week's program, that before going back to Godhead, you take one more birth in a universe where Krishna's pastimes are going on. So that is what's being explained here. The gopis were being promoted from the status of the material world. The gopis who joined Krishna's pastimes within this material world were coming from the status of ordinary human beings. If they had been bound by fruitive action, they were fully freed from the reaction of karma by constant meditation on Krishna. Their severe, painful yearnings, caused by their not being able to see Krishna, freed them from all sinful reactions. And their ecstasy of transcendental love for Krishna in his absence was transcendental to all their reactions of material pious activities. The conditioned soul is subject to birth and death either by pious or by sinful activities. But the gopis who began to meditate on Krishna transcended both positions and became purified and thus elevated to the status of the gopis already expanded by Krishna's pleasure potency and who are his eternal associates. All the gopis who concentrated their minds on Krishna in the spirit of paramour love became fully uncontaminated from all the fruitive reactions of material nature, and some of them immediately gave up their material bodies developed under the three modes of material nature, since they had been checked by their fathers, husbands, or brothers. When they gave up their material bodies out of intense desperation, they then joined the rasa dance in their original spiritual bodies. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So now we bless you with Nirantara's transcendental insurance policy, and then we'll have blessings and questions. Namaste Narasimhaya, Prahlad Ahlad Dayane, Hiranya Kashi Purvaksha, Shilatangana Kalaye, Ito Nasringa Parato Nrsimho, Yato Yato Yamitato Nrsimha, Bahir Nrsimho, Rinaye Nrsimho, Nrsimham Adim Sharanam Prapadye, Nrsimham Adim Sharanam Prapadye, Tavakara Kamala Vare Nakam Adbhuta Sringam, Dalita Hiranya Kashipu Tanu Bringam, Keshavadrita Narahadi Rupa, Jai Jagadisha Hare, Jai Jagadisha Hare, Jai Jagadisha Hare, Keshavadrita Narahadi Rupa, Jai Jagadisha Hare, Jai Jagadisha Hare, Jai Jagadisha Hare, Jai Jagadish, Jai Jagadish, Jai Jagadisha Hare, Hare, Jai Jagadisha Hare. Om Tat Sat